What if one of rock's biggest hits wasn't written to heal a breakup, but to hurt someone on purpose? A song so personal, so brutally honest, that Stevie Nicks had to stand in the studio and sing backup on the very track her ex wrote to attack her. It didn't just shake their relationship, it detonated Fleetwood Mac from the inside out. This is the story of the song that tore them apart, but also turned them into legends. A love that started everything and foreshadowed the end. Before Fleetwood Mac became a storm of breakups, drama, and diamond-certified albums, the entire story really began with two young dreamers who didn't look like future rock legends at all. Stevie Nicks was the shy, poetic daughter of a businessman who moved constantly from city to city. Lindsey Buckingham was the quiet kid in the corner, glued to his guitar, practicing until his fingers blistered. Their worlds collided one afternoon in high school when Stevie heard Lindsey playing California Dreamin'. She didn't know his name yet, but she remembered the feeling, this boy has something. They reconnected a few years later when Lindsey's band Fritz needed a female vocalist. Stevie wasn't confident. She didn't think she had the look. But the moment she stepped behind the microphone, everything clicked. Their voices blended the way their personalities soon would, his sharp edges meeting her soft, mystical energy. Fritz opened for big names like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, but success didn't follow. The band fell apart, and suddenly it was just the two of them against the world. They moved to Los Angeles, broke and exhausted, determined to make music or crash trying. They slept on the same mattress on the floor. Their car was constantly breaking down. Stevie worked as a waitress and cleaned houses for cash, then came home and watched Lindsey rehearse obsessively into the early morning hours. She supported the two of them financially, while he poured all his time into perfecting their sound. Their relationship was fragile even then. Stevie later admitted she often felt like the caretaker, while Lindsey felt suffocated by the pressure to succeed. They loved each other, but the resentment simmered quietly beneath the surface. Still, the music kept them together, at least for a while. Everything changed in 1974 when Mick Fleetwood listened to a track from their struggling duo album. He didn't just like Lindsey's guitar work, he was captivated by it. He wanted that sound for Fleetwood Mac. Lindsey agreed on one condition: Stevie comes too. It was non-negotiable. The band said yes, and in that moment, they didn't just hire two musicians. They invited a complicated romance, years of buried tension, and an emotional earthquake into their world. What began as a love story was now the fuse leading toward one of the most explosive songs in rock history. But fame wouldn't save their relationship. It would shatter every part of it. Breakups, affairs, and the pressure cooker, nobody escaped. By the time Fleetwood Mac began recording Rumours, every relationship in the band had splintered. Stevie and Lindsey had ended their long, complicated romance. Christine and John McVie were no longer speaking outside the studio. Mick Fleetwood had just discovered his wife was having an affair. 5 people, 5 heartbreaks, 1 studio. It was a perfect storm waiting to erupt. Stevie and Lindsey's breakup hit the hardest. They didn't know how to be apart, and they didn't know how to work together either. One minute they were ignoring each other, the next they were arguing so loudly that engineers had to stop recording. Their communication devolved into short, sharp exchanges, resentful, exhausted, and laced with jealousy neither of them would admit. Christine and John weren't doing any better. Christine was writing songs about freedom, while John drowned his emotions in alcohol. When she recorded vocals, he'd sit silently in the corner, wounded, but refusing to leave the band he helped build. Their marriage was over, but their professional lives were locked together. Mick Fleetwood wasn't spared from the chaos. His marriage had disintegrated, leaving him unstable and vulnerable. He tried to keep the sessions moving, but even he was shaken by what came next. A secret relationship between him and Stevie Nicks. It wasn't malicious, it was two damaged people reaching for comfort. But in a room full of raw emotions, it became a live grenade. Lindsey sensed it immediately. Watching Stevie drift toward Mick didn't just hurt, it humiliated him. The breakup had already left him feeling abandoned. This felt like a final blow. The studio stopped feeling like a creative space. It felt like a battlefield, where every lyric, every glance, every unfinished sentence carried hidden meaning. And as the tension thickened, Lindsey realized he had one outlet left, one thing he could still control: the music. And what he wrote next would slice straight through Stevie, the band, and the fragile piece holding them together. Lindsey's message to Stevie, hidden in plain sight. When Lindsey Buckingham picked up his guitar to write "Go Your Own Way," he wasn't trying to create a radio hit. He was trying to survive the breakup that had shattered him. The studio had become a daily reminder of everything he'd lost: Stevie's laughter, their late-night writing sessions, their shared ambition. Now she stood across the room, drifting further away with every session. He felt invisible, replaced, and powerless. Music became the one place where he could express what he couldn't say to Stevie's face. Every strummed chord was sharpened by heartbreak, every lyric a release valve for emotions he had no other outlet for. He wrote quickly, almost feverishly, pouring months of frustration into a rough demo that carried more emotional violence than anything he had ever composed. But one lyric stopped Stevie cold. "Packing up, shacking up is all you want to do." To Lindsey, it reflected the chaos and bitterness he felt watching her move on. To Stevie, it was a knife in the ribs. She insisted it wasn't true, that it distorted who she was. She begged him to change it, not as a bandmate, but as someone who had once been the love of his life. Lindsey refused, not out of cruelty, but because he felt this was the only way he could finally say what had been eating him alive. The breakup had stripped him of control. This song was the one thing he owned. Producers and bandmates saw the tension explode the moment Lindsey played the track. Stevie stood her ground, hurt but composed. Lindsey defended every line with an intensity that surprised even the people who knew him best. No compromise, no apologies. And the cruel twist? Stevie would soon be asked to do the unthinkable, stand behind Lindsey in the studio, and sing harmonies on the song that blamed her for everything. The message was written. Now Stevie had no choice but to hear it, night after night, note after note. The ultimate humiliation. Stevie sings, back up on her own breakup. If writing "Go Your Own Way" was Lindsey's catharsis, recording it was Stevie Nicks' worst nightmare. She walked into the studio knowing the song was about her, knowing the lyrics she hated had survived every argument, knowing Lindsey had turned their private heartbreak into something permanent, something public, something she couldn't escape. And then came the request, "Stevie, we need you to sing backup harmonies." She froze. Not because she couldn't do it, Stevie was a professional to the core, but because the idea felt cruel in a way only someone who truly knew her could deliver. Singing backup on a breakup song written by your ex is one thing. Singing backup on a breakup song that twists your story is another. But she didn't argue. She didn't explode. She didn't walk out. She slipped on the headphones, stepped up to the mic, and did exactly what she had always done. She delivered. Still, the tension in the room was suffocating. The engineers barely spoke above a whisper. Christine kept her distance, sensing the emotional landmine beneath every note. Mick pretended everything was normal, but even he felt the shift in the air. Stevie's voice sounded angelic on the recording, but the room itself felt like a storm cloud ready to burst. Standing just behind Lindsey as he sang the lead vocal was torture. Every line felt like another reminder of what they once had, and what had been destroyed. Stevie wasn't just harmonizing with Lindsey's voice, she was harmonizing with her own heartbreak. At one point, she removed her headphones and said quietly, "You will not say that about me." But Lindsey didn't respond. The song was already bigger than both of them. The red light above the control room door glowed like a warning signal. Recording. No stopping. No hiding. No turning back. And with every take, the emotional divide between them grew deeper. What they didn't realize yet was that the same anger fueling these sessions would push Lindsey into a kind of creative obsession, one that would transform the song into something far more intense than anyone expected. And that obsession was about to take over the entire studio. Lindsey's obsession takes over the studio. Once Stevie laid down her harmonies, "Go Your Own Way" stopped being just a song. It became Lindsey Buckingham's obsession. He didn't simply want it to sound good, he wanted it to feel like the emotional earthquake he was living through. Every chord, every drum hit, every guitar texture had to mirror the chaos inside him. He attacked the track with a kind of intensity the band had never seen from him before. Lindsey wasn't just producing, he was sculpting. He would record a guitar line, listen back, tear it apart, and rebuild it from scratch. Then, do it all again. Hours passed with him hunched over his guitar, experimenting with picking patterns that sounded jagged, sharp, and restless, mirroring the feeling of a breakup that wouldn't let him breathe. Mick Fleetwood, who played drums on the track, later said Lindsey pushed him harder than any producer ever had. Lindsey forced Mick to change his drum pattern over and over, searching for a groove that felt like a chase, relentless, pulsing, almost frantic. Mick admitted he didn't understand the vision at first. But Lindsey, he was possessed, he recalled. He could hear something none of us could. The tension in the studio thickened as Lindsey's perfectionism intensified. At times, he'd block out everyone else's input entirely, building layer upon layer of guitars until the room vibrated with emotional electricity. Engineers watched him working with a mixture of awe and nervousness, afraid to interrupt the creative storm unfolding in front of them. Meanwhile, the rest of the band floated in and out of the sessions, caught between admiration and exhaustion. Christine quietly noted that Lindsey had entered another world, a place driven by heartbreak, adrenaline, and pure creative force. Stevie avoided making eye contact during playback sessions, but she couldn't escape the emotional weight embedded in every note. By the time the final mix was complete, Go Your Own Way sounded nothing like the rough demo Lindsey had written. It was explosive, urgent, and impossibly raw, an anthem that pulsed with fury and longing. No one knew it yet, but the emotional storm Lindsey poured into the track was about to launch Fleetwood Mac into a level of success none of them had ever imagined, and the world was about to hear it for the first time. The world hears it, and everything changes. When Go Your Own Way finally hit the airwaves in late 1976, it didn't just make noise, it detonated. Radio stations couldn't get enough of the jagged guitars, the pounding drums, and Lindsey's raw, almost desperate vocal delivery. It wasn't polished in the traditional sense. It was alive, volatile, and undeniably real. Listeners could feel the tension even if they didn't know the story behind it. Fleetwood Mac had released emotional songs before, but nothing like this. Go Your Own Way hit the public like a punch, direct, painful, defiant. Within weeks, it became the band's first top 10 single in the US, igniting anticipation for the full Rumours album. Critics praised Lindsey's production, calling the song a breakup captured in motion. Fans blasted it on car radios, in clubs, and through cracked home stereos. Everyone felt the power behind it, but nobody understood just how personal it really was. And while the world fell in love with the track, the band had a very different experience. Performing it live was emotional warfare. Every night, Stevie had to stand just a few feet behind Lindsey, singing back up on the lyrics she hated most. Every chorus reminded her of the breakup she was trying so hard to move past. Lindsey, on the other hand, channeled the fury of their fractured relationship into his performance, often glaring across the stage with a kind of intensity that made even fans pick up on the tension. Mick Fleetwood later said, watching Lindsey and Stevie perform the song was like watching two people relive their breakup in real time. There was no acting, no barrier, just two former lovers locked in a musical duel, night after night, with thousands of people unknowingly cheering them on. Yet the pain they carried on stage became the fuel that pushed the album into legendary territory. As Go Your Own Way climbed the charts, it didn't just make Fleetwood Mac famous, it made them iconic. But success didn't heal the damage behind the scenes. If anything, it deepened the wound, and the fallout would shape the band's legacy forever. The legacy. Immortal art, permanent damage. As Go Your Own Way climbed the charts, Fleetwood Mac stepped into global fame, but the emotional wreckage behind the song never healed. Each performance became a reminder of everything they'd lost. Fans heard a brilliant breakup anthem. The band felt a wound reopening night after night. On stage, the dynamic was unmistakable. Lindsey poured every ounce of unresolved anger into the lead vocal, while Stevie stood just behind him, singing harmonies on the very line she despised. They weren't acting, they weren't exaggerating. They were reliving the breakup in real time, under blinding lights and roaring crowds. The success of Rumours only added pressure. It became one of the best-selling albums in history, loved because it captured something brutally human, heartbreak that could be felt in every note. People connected to it deeply, never realizing the price the band paid to make it. Stevie later said, "Hearing the song still hurts." Lindsey admitted writing it was the only way he could express the truth. Decades passed, but the emotional sting never fully disappeared. Go Your Own Way made Fleetwood Mac legends, but it also marked the moment their personal bonds cracked beyond repair. Greatness came, but not without scars. Go Your Own Way didn't just end a relationship, it exposed it. It scarred the band, electrified the world, and turned Heartbreak into one of rock's most iconic anthems. Pain made the song, truth made it timeless. If you want more untold stories behind the songs that shaped generations, hit subscribe to Backstage Melody. Don't miss the next legend we uncover. It's even wilder than this one.